I didn't know you had a drought. It's a man-made drought. You know that? Man/women. It's a women-made. I don't know. I don't think women did that. No. Women are too smart to do that. They don't create droughts. No, it's a man-made drought. Let's leave it man-made. I think women will be honored when I say that.
You know, there are some things that you should just leave as man-made, and you know, woman-made, a drought, a crime wave, you know, mental illness, homelessness. I think we should call it Democrat-made. I think the Democrats are in charge of the weather, right? They took over the weather some time ago. It's going to be a little warm here today, and that means it's a bad day for Democrats because Democrats despise a warm day. They don't like nice weather. Nice sunny day, that makes them very unhappy. Normal people like a nice warm day. If you're a Democrat, it's, you know, everything is complicated because, wait, a nice day in the first week of October? I think that's bad, isn't it? I think that we got to panic about that. That's crazy. So it's going to be a real nice low 80s all week long. My best girl and I and Larry O'Connor and his loving bride Meredith, we spent the weekend together, the four of us, in Washington, Virginia, Little Washington. They call it Little Washington because, you know, Big Washington is over here, but, you know, it's not doing so well. We went to Little Washington in Virginia, over about 75 miles south and west, really west and south of Washington, D.C., and we spent the weekend there, and it was very nice. The people are nice there. That means it's a different culture altogether, but had a very, very nice time. And we talked about a lot of stuff, talked about a whole lot of stuff. Not man-made, woman-made. We didn't talk about that. But we did talk about a lot of things. And I got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I've got a category of crime stories for you because the Democrats are on the loose. I've got Trump things for you. We just had our first Donald Trump soundbite, our opening soundbite in the morning. I didn't know what it was going to be until I heard it. Michael surprises me with the opening soundbite every day, and that's fun. We got an update on the Dianne Feinstein, Senator Dianne Feinstein, who sadly died last week at the age of 90 after a long and wonderful life. And Gavin Newsom, who is, you know, the poster child for poster children, and he picked a successor, a replacement. And you'll be surprised to learn that the replacement is a black woman, lesbian, advocate for abortion. If you're a lesbian, why are you an advocate for abortion? But okay. And a union radical, SEIU, Service Employees International Union, radical and extremist. She's an extremist, and she lives in Maryland. Minor thing, but she's rich, you know, from being a union leader and an abortion advocate. So she's got a house in Los Angeles. Now she's just going to have to move there since, but she lives in Maryland. So he picked LGBT, WOC, that's woman of color. They like to abbreviate everything, make everything a code, and then accuse you of speaking in code, right? So got an L, and really she's just an L. I guess G, she's LG. So you're like the TV. So you got an LG, WOC, who lives in Maryland, who's an abortion union advocate to replace Senator Dianne Feinstein temporarily till they have an election. And then Democrats are going to be shooting each other over this, the way it sounds right now. But they're shooting each other over everything all the time, aren't they? That's what they do. Who do you think's shooting all these people? So we've got those stories for you. And other weekend, we got a Bill Cosby update. This one sounds a little cheesy to me, but I'll get into that. RFK Jr. May jump into the race as an independent. Why does everything have to be about race? He may jump into the race as an independent. The Washington Post says, because they lie about absolutely everything at the Washington Post, said, this is going to be really bad for Trump, not for Biden, but for Trump. Because, they wake up in the morning and they say, what am I going to lie about today? Give me my keyboard. I've got a lie busting out. I got to put it right here in print or type. Anyway, amazing stuff. President Trump set to appear in court today in New York City because remember the Democrats up there, the judge and the prosecutor who are radicals, and they said President Trump lied about the value of his real estate and committed fraud, and we're going to pull his business licenses from New York. And the first thing they did was lie about the value of his real estate. While they're accusing him of lying about the value of his real estate, no sense of irony, these people. But are they all criminals, Michael? I'm just curious. It's kind of an amazing thing we got going there. It sure is. So we got that. And, of course, the Democrat member of the House of Representatives, who's a radical, extremist, left-wing lunatic, and he pulled the fire alarm the other day to delay the vote on keeping the government funded because they're all radicals. And then he explained that he's so stupid. How stupid is he? That he doesn't know a fire alarm from a door. You know, the little red metal thing, and then when you put your 3 fingers in it and pull it down, and it says fire on it and fire alarm, and he pulled the fire alarm to delay an official proceeding, which I think is seditious conspiracy. And then his spokesperson and other staffers lied to the press about it. So that's definitely a seditious conspiracy. And he's obstructing the official business of government, which I know will get you at least 22 years in prison. So I think that Congressman Jamaal Bowman, Radical Jamaal, they call him, from New York. And it looks like he's going to prison for a long, long time. He won't, of course, because we have 2 systems of justice, and the Democrats are incredibly corrupt. That's one of the problems we have here in Washington and in the United States of America. So we've got that going. But the Jamaal Bowman story is quite amazing. It's and I've got lots of stuff for you on that because the media is lying about it, along with the seditious co-conspirators in his office. Really, the media people should be arrested for their involvement in the seditious conspiracy, because they're very much involved. We got that. President Trump also, he used an unsavory word at a public event over the weekend, a 4-syllable vulgarity, and it was kind of interesting. I'll share that with you. We've bleeped the requisite segment so that it is airable within the FCC rules, but we'll share that with you. And lots to update on President Trump today, as a matter of fact. The Girl Scouts are jacking their prices up because Bidenomics working so well. And everybody loves Bidenomics. Even the radical left-wingers in the press are now starting to say, this whole Bidenomics branding thing may not be working out as well as we had originally hoped, because it turns out Bidenomics sucks. And everybody knows it except the people, the New York Times and the Washington Post. But that's because they lie about everything, which is why they have the approval rating of child molesters. That's the news media, the American news people. Speaking of Democrats, a Democrat, you know, they love committing crime. They like a lot of crime, and they like shooting people. They like carjacking people. They like looting stores. They're Democrats, not a single MAGA hat wearing Republican in the bunch for years now. And trust me, the Democrats and the media, but I repeat myself, have been looking for that unicorn that is a Trump-supporting, MAGA hat-wearing, Trump T-shirt sporting looter or carjacker, or, you know, beating people up in alleys like in Chicago. All Democrats. They're all Democrats. And some amazing crime stories today. A Democrat who set the store clerk on fire. Did you see this? He took a flammable fluid, and it was his 3rd shoplifting trip to the same store in one day. The criminal, the Democrat, who the Democrats put on the street to commit more crime, because vote Democrat, vote for crime. You want more crime, you vote for Democrats. You want murder, more people murdered and more murderers, vote for Democrats. More looting, more businesses closing down, you vote for Democrats, because they're the party of crime, of murder, of carjacking, of non-fatal shootings, of looting, of arson. That's the Democrat Party. You know, they're the party of the Klan. They burn churches and things. You know, they've attacked about 300 Catholic churches, the Democrats have, just since that leak at the Supreme Court. We still haven't identified the leaker. She's going to be a Democrat official soon. Everybody knows who she is. But we're not going to find out. So, yeah, the Democrats set the store clerk's head on fire, and he's in the hospital all bandaged up. Looks like the Civil War, because a Democrat set him on fire during his 3rd shoplifting, looting spree in the same store. And the man who was set on fire, and the third time he came in to steal, the clerk said, "Hey, stop stealing from my store." So the guy doused him in flammable liquid and set him on fire because he's a Democrat, And in Chicago, you got a Democrat alderman there who says innocent people are being hunted like prey. And he says that because it's true. And it's all Democrats hunting people like prey with guns that are illegal. Speaking of which, Jacksonville, Florida. What is Jacksonville, Florida? Not exactly Chicago or Baltimore. 6 people shot. Mass shooting adds to Jacksonville violence. I would think so. And D.C., I don't even know. I checked last night, but so many people shot in D.C. over the weekend that the news media can't keep up. Shot, killed, Sunday morning, Democrats, But there is one kind of interesting story that I thought, that's all just run-of-the-mill Democrat Party stuff, another weekend in another Democrat city. But there is a pretty amazing story that got my attention yesterday. When I heard it, I came home from a weekend in civilization, came back to Washington, D.C., and it's funny, we were in Washington, Virginia, and we slept there Friday night, woke up Saturday morning, went out to a patio, and we'd only been awake for a few minutes, and heard a gunshot, half mile away or something, heard a gunshot, and didn't think, oh, people are shooting each other. Because in D.C. you hear a gunshot, and that's what you know is happening. But out there, it's like, somebody's shooting a duck for dinner tonight. That's or some kind of varmint. But that's it, just one shot, and you know that it's perfectly kosher, no big deal. But let me get back to this story because it's a story of Democrats and tragedy for 4 Democrat families, and another crime committed because Democrats. Are they all criminals, Michael? All the Democrats? We got Jamaal Bowman, the Democrat congressman from New York, pulling the fire alarm to obstruct an official proceeding, which is exactly what everybody at January 6th is convicted of, and seditious conspiracy with his staffers and the news media to obstruct the official proceeding of government, which is the vote to keep the government going. But the Democrats, wait, this just in. What? Jamaal Bowman has self-immolated in front of the Capitol? He hasn't really, but the day is young. Let me get back to this story of the Democrats here. Here it is. Police say car involved in deadly Bowie crash, that's a town in Maryland, was stolen in armed carjacking. Wait, what's this? What happened? This is crazy. There was a fiery crash, and it was stolen in an armed carjacking. Let me share this with you because Channel 7 News. After 4 people died in a fiery single vehicle crash in Bowie on Friday, investigators say that the car was stolen in a carjacking. What? Around 7:30 p.m. Friday, officers in the area of Lotsford Road observed a Kia Sorento, where they got to plug the car, with expired temporary tags, according to Prince George's County Police. Those officers reportedly attempted a traffic stop on the car, but the car sped off. See, they didn't even know it was a carjacked car. It's got temporary tags, and the temporary tags are expired. So the police see that, and they say, hey, there's a car with temporary tags and all this stuff. And it turns out, just minutes later, witnesses said they saw the car traveling at a very high rate of speed, and it passed them, and it veered off the road, lost control. The car crashed into a tree. The car burst into flames, killing all 4 passengers inside. Investigators then later determined that the car had been taken in an armed carjacking in the city of Greenbelt. Police have still not identified those killed in the crash. So 4 Democrats with a gun carjacked a guy in a Kia Sorento with expired temporary tags. The carjackers take off in the car. The police try to pull the car over for the expired tags. The carjackers take off at a high rate of speed, crash into a tree. The car bursts into flames. All 4 people inside the car are killed in a fiery crash. The carjackers And the poor guy that got carjacked, he's pretty screwed. And 4 Democrat families now have a story to tell about their carjacker kids and the high-speed chase ending in a fiery crash where everyone is killed. Now, I don't want to say that Democrats know how to make carjacking funny, but, they consistently do the same thing, don't they? Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Book by this July 31st for extra savings. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. Dun, 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 dun. We are at 888-630-9625. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Talk to the nice people. Let's talk to William calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. William, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, I called you before. This congressman that pulled the fire alarm in the Capitol, to my knowledge, that's a felony in every state. How come no one's talking about that, pulling a false alarm?
Well, in the District of Columbia, it's a misdemeanor, but so is murder. So that's kind of a strange thing.
Well, it's community service, Chris. I correct you.
Yeah, I looked up the code for D.C., and it is a misdemeanor punishable by a fine of up to $100. Hey, don't go too crazy. And up to 6 months in prison. Devil's Island is that's where they put everybody now. Yeah, violating provision, deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and a fine not exceeding $100 and imprisonment for not more than 6 months. But here's the thing, William. It's not just pulling the fire. And he was a high school principal, I think, for 12 years. And he says he doesn't know how fire alarm works. They had to do 12 fire drills every year in his school. But he's not familiar with the complex ways of doors and fire alarms. And he can't read because there are big red signs on the doors. But he also...
Like Hank Johnson. He sounds a bit like Hank Johnson to me. I was going to tip over.
He sounds like a not very bright guy, an educator, then a Democrat member of the House of Representatives. And that's just perfect, right? But he also engaged in a seditious conspiracy with his staffers to deceive the public and to obstruct an official proceeding of Congress, which, again, William, is what everyone from January 6th has been charged with. And a lot of them are doing long prison sentences, outrageous prison sentences, by a corrupt prosecutor in a corrupt city, our nation's capital. But I do think that Congressman Jamaal Bowman needs to be held strictly to the letter of the law when it comes to obstructing an official proceeding of government and a seditious conspiracy. Now, I look stuff up. I do a lot of looking stuff up. And we got this Democrat Congressman Jamaal Bowman, who's a radical and an extremist. And he obstructed an official proceeding of government the other day by falsely pulling a fire alarm, which caused the evacuation of the Cannon House office building, one of 3 office buildings for members of the House of Representatives. And he is a member of the House of Representatives. And the vote was coming up on keeping government operations going, which is another topic altogether today, because that has, there's some controversy associated with that and Kevin McCarthy. Republicans talking about removing Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. But let me get back to this for a minute, because here's what the Democrat left-wing radical kind of squad member Jamaal Bowman, an extremist, he pulled the fire alarm, and there are big red plastic signs in the doorway that, this is an emergency exit, alarms will sound. But he didn't push through the door. He stopped and turned, looked at the wall. As a 12-year high school principal, he pulled the fire alarm, and then he stood there like a moron. And the Capitol Police still haven't released the video. They have released a couple of still photos. But the video, it turns out there are cameras everywhere in the Capitol, interestingly enough. But let me get to some of this other. Here's June 2nd of 2021. from the Department of Justice, pardon me, from the Department of Justice, or the so-called Department of Justice, aka the Department of Injustice, the Department of Corruption, under Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, where they lynch their political enemies because the Democrat Party is the party of lynching people from trees with ropes. They're the party of the Confederate States of America and Jim Crow. So here's the press release from the Justice Department, June 2nd, 2021. Man pleads guilty to obstruction of an official proceeding. That's what Congressman Jamaal Bowman did for breaching U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Again, this is June of 2021, months later. Defendant illegally entered U.S. Capitol. Was he waved in by the U.S. Capitol Police and just walked right in like so many people did that day? Walked in the Senate chamber, took a selfie, and stood with other individuals. You can only imagine the horror that the nation felt. A man standing there and taking a selfie after walking into the Capitol unobstructed, unimpeded. A Florida man pleaded guilty today to crimes related to the breach of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, which disrupted a joint session of the U.S. Congress. That's what it was, a session of the House of Representatives that Jamaal Bowman was obstructing and disrupting. The process of ascertaining and counting electoral votes related to the presidential election. Okay, now, over the weekend, on Saturday, in the House, they were taking a vote on keeping the government up and running and preventing a government shutdown, which the Democrats care so much about. It's the weekend. The government shuts down every weekend. Government shut down every Saturday and Sunday. And if the government had shut down, essential personnel would still have to show up, which always raises the question, why do we have so many non-essential personnel? How many non-essential personnel do you think Microsoft has or GM? None? Oh, yeah, none. But let me continue here. According to court documents, Paul Hodgkins, 38 years old, of Tampa, Florida, entered the U.S. Capitol building at approximately 2:50 p.m. on January 6th. All right, he entered. Doesn't say anything more about his entering. He didn't smash a window. He didn't hit anybody. He just walked in. He probably just sauntered in, being waved in by the U.S. Capitol Police because that was happening for quite some time there on January 6th. Around 3 p.m., Hodgkins entered the Senate chamber. Did anybody try to stop him? Did he assault anybody, or did he just walk in? Walked among the desks. That should be the name of his book, I Walked Among the Desks. And then removed eye goggles. This is an important detail of the Justice Department press release. He took a, quote, selfie style, end quote, why is that in quotation marks, photograph with his cell phone and walked down the center to the center of the Senate well, where a few feet away, several individuals were shouting, praying, and cheering using a bullhorn. Hodgkins walked toward the individuals and remained standing with them while they continued commanding the attention of others. They were commanding the attention of others. At approximately 3:15 p.m., Hodgkins exited the Senate chamber and the U.S. Capitol building. So he walked in unimpeded, based on this, at 2:50, and then to the Capitol building. Then he walked into the Senate chamber, he took a selfie, and then he left. Now, that's it. Hodgkins pleaded guilty to one count of obstructing an official proceeding. That's what Congressman Jamaal Bowman did on Saturday. Listen now, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, fine of $250,000, or twice the monetary gain of loss of the offense. So wait, 20 years in prison, $250,000 for the crime of obstructing an official proceeding, which is what Congressman Jamaal Bowman did on Saturday, right? And then there's the misdemeanor offense of pulling a fire alarm without cause in Washington, D.C., which in D.C. is a misdemeanor offense. But this obviously is a big felony, what the congressman did. But when you're a Democrat, that's pretty much okay, you know, because Democrats are corrupt, commit crimes all the time, crash carjacked cars into trees, bursting into flames, killing everyone in the car from time to time, because Democrats. Okay, let's take another phone call, Michael. We are at 888-630-9625. Let's go to Doug, calling from the great state of Georgia. Doug, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Well, I'm an old retired fireman. They had nothing more aggravating than answering a false alarm.
At the U.S. Capitol, at a congressional House office building, while they're debating keeping the government running.
And see, when they put that, they got to vacate the whole building.
Which they did. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you were listening, Doug, when I had jury duty weeks ago now, and I was in the D.C. courthouse, and while I was there in the jury room waiting for the next step, a fire alarm went off, and they evacuated the entire courthouse building, and everybody was out on the sidewalk. I didn't leave the building because I knew it was a fake, so I just kind of lingered, and I didn't go down the escalators, and I didn't leave. I stayed. But then everybody in the building had to come back through magnetometers and security and stuff because it's D.C. courthouse, right? So it took a long, long time. And somebody pulled the fire alarm. And, of course, nobody's ever held accountable. Now, as a retired fireman, obviously there's nothing more annoying than showing up to a false alarm. But what's the penalty for that, Doug?
I'd heard 30 days. And it ought to be put under. Hey, and I was a driver.
Uh-huh.
I just think of having to drive through all that traffic and the big risk of having an accident. Sure.
Yeah, you got to get there. And it's the Capitol. So when they see the fire alarm goes off at one of the Capitol buildings, Capitol office buildings, there are 6 office buildings, 3 on the House side, 3 on the Senate side, and Canada's. And they're very large buildings. Hundreds of people work in those. And everything's very sensitive these days because Democrats keep shooting so many people. So, it's crazy. And as a retired firefighter, I would expect there's a lot of stuff you like better than showing up to false alarms. And he's a Democrat congressman. What should happen to him, Doug?
Well, I sure didn't need. They all be put in jail or what? They don't need a big gold rate. I'll tell you something kind of amusing. My son was outside working. He hollered in, my little granddaughter in the house. Honey, I need some help. She called 911. Now, that's not a false alarm. And Daddy was saying need help. She thought he was really in trouble. Now, that's not a false alarm, but they did, send someone out.
Well, that's just an unfortunate incident. But when the Democrat member of Congress, House of Representatives, wants to postpone, delay, obstruct, because they're trying to sabotage it, because they cut a deal with their bootlicks in the press that no matter what happened, if the House couldn't pass the funding bill, it was going to be the Republicans' fault. And there'll be more on that later as well, Doug. Now, with that, Michael, we should get to some audio on the subject because it's crazy the way this whole thing is going. And we got a lot of back and forth between Kevin McCarthy and Congressman Matt Gaetz and the corrupt news media and Joe Biden and all kinds of stuff. But the Congresswoman from New York, from Staten Island, is Nicole Malliotakis. And she's one of my faves these days. I got to tell you, she's doing great stuff. Before we do, let's go to Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, first. Let's go to number 17, because the Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, ironically known, perhaps, Kevin McCarthy, was on the television this morning on the Fox News channel, and he was asked about Democrat congressman and criminal Jamaal Bowman, who criminally obstructed an official government proceeding, which is punishable by up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. And the Speaker of the House this morning said, hey, Mr. Speaker, the congressman says, wait, he thought that, that's how you open the door, by pulling the fire alarm, because he's just a member of Congress and a 12-year high school principal who had to conduct 12 fire drills in the school every year. And then before that, he was presumably a child who went to school where they had fire drills and where they had fire alarms. But he didn't know anything about any of this, and he didn't know there were cameras everywhere. Every day's an IQ test, Jamaal. You failed again, pal, oh pal. Here's the Speaker of the House.
Well, first of all, we're going to go through the investigation. What's really interesting, this is a former principal. He knows what a fire alarm is. This is a man that has gone on and yelled at members, and his behavior has been unbecoming. But what's interesting, if it really was just an accident, when the Capitol Police came to interview you, why would you lawyer up right away?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just say, oh my gosh, I made a mistake here? Why would you let it go on?
Why would you let it go on? Why would you? Well, he obstructed an official proceeding of the government of Congress, and that's 20 years and $250,000. They should be slapping the cuffs on there. They should be taking him away with leg restraints, and he should be in the back of a paddy wagon, which is an anti-Irish slur.
If you know this individual, everybody knows. And if you've been a principal, you've had fire alarms and you've had children pull fire alarms. So is that where you go to the childish action?
Yeah. Do you want to see his phone to see if Hakeem Jeffries told him to do it?
I do not believe Hakeem Jeffries would ever say to do that.
Sure. The Democrat leader in the House of Representatives. But he started, McCarthy did, by saying, if you know this man, then you know. And that should have been the follow-up question. What exactly do you mean by that? Now, when you're a Democrat, it's all okay because the news media protects you and they love you, they adore you, they probably want to date you and they want to give you to their daughter, and they're Democrats. Jake Tapper is a former Democrat Capitol Hill staffer and convicted Monica Lewinsky dater. And he has a show on CNN where they pay him to say things like this.
There was an interesting moment over the weekend when your New York colleague, Congressman Jamaal Bowman, and he's under investigation for this now after Capitol Police say he pulled a fire alarm in one of the House office buildings. Democrats were trying to delay a final vote on the bill. There he is pulling the fire alarm. He says it was an accident. He thought pulling the alarm would open a door based on the fact that the doors to his right there were locked, and there was a sign that he said he was, I think someone said it was confusing. I'll be honest, it doesn't really make sense to me, his explanation. Have you talked to him? What's going on there?
I mean,
She spoke to him. She didn't speak to him. And then she lied because, AOC.
I think if you actually do see some of the photos of the signs, I think there's something to be said about the government's about to shut down. There's a vote clock that's going down. The exits that are normally open in that building were suddenly closed.
So you pulled a fire alarm?
They weren't suddenly closed.
What I'm here to say
That's a lie.
House administration and U.S. Capitol Police and Jamaal Bowman are an active, and he's fully participating in saying there was a misunderstanding.
There was a misunderstanding. I have photographs of the doors, giant red plastic plaques with giant white letters. Emergency exit only. Push until alarm sounds. 3 seconds. Door will unlock in 30 seconds. And there are big signs all over the place, saying, you don't, and then you look on the wall over there, and there's the little usual thing about the size of your hand, a red metal fire alarm that says fire alarm, and you got to yank it to set off the fire alarm, and that doesn't open doors. And so his defense is that he's the stupidest man that anyone has ever met. And as a high school principal, I think we should review the high school diplomas that were handed out over the course of his 12 years as a principal. Ought to take a look at everything else that happened there, too. There's a lot more. MSDNC, the media, and the wonderful Congresswoman from New York, Nicole Malliotakis, coming up.
The Constitution does not say that a person can yell wolf in a crowded theater.
That's exactly right. As the Speaker of the House, Emerita, informs us, the Constitution does not say you can just yell wolf in a crowded theater. It's a quote for the ages there. The front page, the cover of the New York Post today. I'm sure the New York Times doesn't even have the story. With a photograph of the fire alarm that radical extremist Democrat Congressman Jamaal Bowman pulled. The 12-year high school principal doesn't know how a fire alarm works. And it's a picture of the fire alarm that he pulled, and it says, "Does this look like a door handle?" Representative Bowman's absurd alarm excuse exposed. New pictures throw cold water on Representative Jamaal Bowman's excuses for pulling fire alarm in House building. Not just pull the fire alarm, but rip down the signs, throw them to the side, pull the fire alarm, and run in the opposite direction. Not a smart man. This, the media says, is a sensible strategy for exiting a building. And he should be mocked until he's thrown out of Congress. He should actually face charges just as the January 6 people did for obstructing. If we have equal justice under law, which is what it says over the entrance to the Supreme Court, then he would be held to the same standard, right, as somebody that walked into the Capitol, walked unobstructed, unimpeded, walked into the Senate chamber, also unimpeded, took a selfie, and then left the Capitol building, facing 20 years in prison and $250,000 fine. Now, Congressman Bowman, failing the IQ test again and again, wrote in a statement, or someone else did for him, "Today, I was rushing to make a vote. I came to a door that is usually open," that's a lie, "for votes, but today would not open," that's a lie. "I'm embarrassed to admit that I activated the fire alarm, mistakenly thinking it would open the door." He doesn't know how doors work or how fire alarms work. He should be thrown out of Congress for being that stupid. He said, "I want to be very clear. This was not me in any way trying to delay any vote." Of course. He lies because he's a Democrat and he knows that he can say whatever he wants, however false. And there are these big signs, like 18-inch red plastic signs that make it clear. And he threw them to the side and he pulled the fire alarm, and they won't release the video because there's a cover-up, a seditious conspiracy going on. The Capitol Police